and get started. We did have one or two people that were having some trouble logging on, so hopefully we'll be able to get everyone on soon, and you'll be able to participate with us now as audio portion. Let me go ahead and I'm going to get started with the housekeeping. Again, my name is Katie Metz with the National Disability Institute, and we'd like to welcome you to our 2012 webinar series. Our web today is sponsored by both Bank of America and Walmart, and we thank them for their continued support. Listening to the webinar today, we do have a new format. So the audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. If you are listening through your computer, please make sure your speakers are turned on or your headphones are plugged in, and you can control audio broadcast via the audio broadcast panel. If you accidentally close that panel, you can reopen it from that menu by choosing Communicate and then Join Audio Broadcast. So listen to the webinar via telephone by dialing the number you'll see on your screen, 877-668-4490. And the meeting code, of course, is 966-29-917. You don't have to enter an attendee ID, and that number should pop up as well when you log in if you are not using your computer's audio. Real quickly, the webinar housekeeping. Please note in the lower right-hand screen of your screen, we have closed captioning available for participants who are deaf or hard of hearing or where English may be a second language. You can close it down if you're not wanting to use that box, minimizing the multimedia window, or you can make the multimedia window with the closed captioning bigger by minimizing the windows above it. If you experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat box to message to Nakia Matthews, or you can email nmatthews@ndiinc.org. You're also welcome to email myself. Many of you have my email address from the invitation that went out at kets@ndi-inc.org as well. Questions and answers, please use the chat box to send any questions you have during the webinar to either Nakia or myself, Katie Metz, and we direct the questions accordingly to the presenters. We have several presenters on today, so we want to make sure we try to get as many questions in as we can. If you are listening by phone and not logged into the webinar, you can also ask questions by emailing them directly to me, again at kmetz@ndi-inc.org. Please note the webinar is being recorded, and the materials will be placed on the NDI website at www.realeconomicimpact.org. I am going to turn it over to my colleague, our National Program Director, Michael Rausch.
Great. Thank you, Katie, and for joining us today for today's webinar that is presented by National Disability Institute's Real Economic Impact Tour. Today's webinar is titled Best Practices from the Field. It's a 2012 tax season recap. And this has been a very busy tax season, similar to last year's and years in the past. Katie had mentioned my name is Michael Rausch, and I am the National Program Director for the Real Economic Impact Tour. Today's webinar is sponsored by our partners at Walmart and Bank of America, and I'd like to give special thanks to them for sponsoring this webinar series that we have put together this year. I'd also like to thank our national partner, the Internal Revenue Service. Without their support, we would not have the Real Economic Impact Tour, so we really appreciate their support as well. Those of you who may not be familiar with the National Disability Institute, we are a national research and development organization, and our mission is to promote income preservation and asset development for persons with disabilities, basically working to build a better economic future. And we support our mission at the National Disability Institute in a variety of ways. And our signature project is the Real Economic Impact Tour. And the Real Economic Impact Tour is a national initiative to build disability-inclusive free tax assistance, financial education, and asset-building opportunities for persons with disabilities through trusted networks. And with many of you who who are on the phone today are partners of the Real Economic Impact Tour. Truly are doing amazing work. And we're excited that this year we get to share some of these best practices with each of you today. Sorry, some technical difficulties here transitioning the slides. I thank our national sponsors, Walmart, Bank of America, Accorda Therapeutics, Burton Blatt Institute, the Institute for Economic Empowerment, and, of course, the Internal Revenue Service. Before we get started with our program, I'd also like to recognize my colleagues at the National Disability Institute who are working on the Real Economic Impact Tour. I'd like to thank Katie Metz, Nakia Matthews, who works on our webinars and our technology, King Burke, and, of course, Dr. Johnette Hartnett. Today we're joined by representatives from the Internal Revenue Service and Real Economic Impact Tour partners who have agreed to share a few of their best practices, lessons learned this year, and new opportunities that they can share with us today. Amazing work is taking place across the country to build a better economic future for persons with disabilities. And I'm excited that we have these opportunities to share with you today. There are more best practices to share, and we connected all of the best practices in this 1-hour webinar for today. So I really encourage you to sign up for the Real Economic Impact Tour listserv, where you will be able to communicate with your colleagues from across the country and see additional best practices that are taking place. I would like to turn it over to our first presenter. Richard Keeling is a senior tax analyst with the Internal Revenue Service and a good friend to the National Disability Institute. So with that, Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. I as much time. I'm going to be giving you some information regarding some of the data we have this year, and then just a few things that we have works for next year. First, I really want to thank all of you there and that you did, whether it be outreach, tax preparation, asking opportunities. Thank you for everything that you've done for people with disabilities and just the general underserved in general. We appreciate it, and that includes all of our field spec personnel that's attending this webinar. And the slide to my webinar up here. Let me see. There. Thank you. Just basic statistics, and if there's anybody on the call that is blind impaired, I'm not going to go over everything here. I'm just going to hit some of the high numbers here, and that we partners prepared approximately 2.2 million tax returns this year that brought back about $3.7 billion in refunds, and both of these were increases from last year. As far as the number of people with disabilities, unfortunately, the number that we have on the screen here of 555,203 is incorrect. We found this out last week. We don't actually know the number yet. We're working with CCs to get it. We hope it is going to be an increase. I believe it will be. But unfortunately, when I was preparing this last week, that's the number we had. I was told it was good. We sent out it isn't good. So we hope to have that data. So having said that, we did have approximately 14,000 sites this year. That's about 500 facilitated self-assistance sites and 62 virtual VITA sites. And I won't talk much about that, so I have another presenter speak to that, but I did want to mention that the 2012 year a baseline year for our virtual VITA, and we do have processes that are in place to segment the virtual VITA returns for upcoming years. I want to mention a huge success for us was the launch of VitaSite Locator on irs.gov. This was launched early in the year. It had approximately 5,000 sites that were available, not AARP specifically, and it had some great features on it, especially the Google Map feature where you could use to map where your closest site was. And the great thing about this site well is it updated at least a week, and that's a huge increase from what we used to have, where it would update maybe once a week at best. And the VITA Locator is open the rest of the year as well. That with some of our filing information, I just want to talk about some of the things. As you know, filing season ends, we're already working on next filing season, and some good things that I think people will find as successful forward. And first of all, the VITA grant, which is currently open. Hopefully, many of the people on the call have applied for the grant or received the grant in the past. There were calls on this last week, 8th and 9th. If you did not have a chance to participate on calls or answer any questions, you please know, and I could get you that information. The VITA was moved up a month so that the month could be, or that they could announce the award recipients a little bit earlier, so that the award announcements will be in October, the 1st of October. We have 301 applicants last year requesting $33.3 million, and 213 recipients were awarded $1 million. As far as the tax counseling for the elderly grants, there were 8 applicants requesting $8 million, and 30 recipients that $5.6 million. I don't know about the funding for the TCE grant because that is contingent upon the budget for next year, which is on its way through Congress. And I want to talk about a little bit about some of the opportunities, some of the changes, some things that we're looking forward to. And no, I think one associated with tax prep this year have some problems with tax files online and going down at times. One of the things that we're working with CH and tax files on is the contingency plan for future outages that would basically have you work offline if in fact the tax files online did go down. So we're in the design and implementation stages of that, and we hope to have more information by the end of this month. The thing that will be available is a communication tool from tax files. There's feasibility of this proposal, and we have information for our volunteers and some of our other volunteers that are assistants. We hope this new communication tool will be an excellent resource for our volunteers. Will make information more accessible. We have a quality assurance monitoring vendor would be held to a performance standard and face repercussions if they do not have performance, do not meet their performance standards. In other words, what it means is we're going to hold their feet to the fire if they don't do what we ask them to do. So this is a good thing as well, a little bit more accountability. Some of the things that we're going to be doing are about the filing methods. We really hope to ramp this up and get some of the facilitated self-assistance and divide up things in place. We have to have more effective strategies for outreach about facilitated self-assistance and virtual VITA. We do hope to do extensive marketing and have an outreach plan in effect there with everyone by June 30th regarding the alternative filing season methods. And we hope products and training is up to everyone's standards. Our commitments are the same. There will be products that are under consideration as far as electric-only version. However, like I said, we want to make sure we provide all our partners with the best possible resources out there. One to the Link and Learn enhancement is we hope that there will be, there will be an instructor PowerPoint out there that'll be available in addition to the instructor lesson plans. So some of the things coming up, and with that, I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done. You really did make a difference in this filing season. Again, we had an increase from last year, and we hope that you will continue to expectations again next year. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Michael Katie.
Thank you. We really appreciate you sharing information with us today, and we will open it up to questions after the event or after each of the presenters have spoken, and then people can ask questions. Next is Katie Lyons, who is with the Creating Assets, Savings, and Hope campaign with the United Way of Buffalo and Erie County, and she is going to share some information with us. And I apologize for the technical difficulties that we're having. I'm unable to change the slide for Katie. So let's see. Now I'm able to. Okay, great. Katie, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Well, just a little bit of brief history. In 2009, we had received a mini grant from the Disability Institute for an effort called New York Makes Work Pay, and it was full of coalitions across New York State working to increase the number of clients who had a disability or lived with somebody who had a disability in utilizing our tax services. And the goal was to increase that number by 10%. And our coalition, what we do is collect information on a paper intake. It's actually something that we stuff into the federal intake, and that's what we use to collect a lot of our data. That's what we had been using. And halfway through the filing season, my IRS spec representative had said to me, why don't we pull this number from TaxWise? I think maybe 2 years ago it was a different number, maybe 14 or 15. But the disability question, do you or does somebody in your household have a disability? So I said, well, that seems like a good idea. It's probably a more accurate read, considering, every taxpayer is sitting there and should be answering this question. And then we came to a realization when she had reported that this number was incredibly low, that the person who loaded software to all of our computers did not make the field mandatory. It is a mandatory field, for us, and certainly something that we were counting on in order for us to determine what those numbers were, which, really led us to another conversation. Not just, why was the software not uploaded properly, but, why are people not answering this question? Even if it's not a mandatory field, it's still a question there, so how come people aren't asking it? And having that conversation, it was our work group, our disability work group, who had been meeting, and I had actually taken this back to them, and they had urged me to connect with the people who operate all of our data sites to just say, ask them? Why not asking this question? And so it was brought to our attention that people felt uncomfortable about asking the question. They didn't want to sit there and have a conversation about the issue. All different sorts of excuses for why, this volunteer was not doing their job, which obviously was a problem for us because we were relying on that information to determine success. And so that's when, at our disability work group, we had really just started brainstorming. What can we do to fix this? And in a matter of one meeting, just kind of got talking, and for some, I'm not sure how it came up. I really can't even remember the conversation. It was quite some time ago, but we had decided on a sensitivity training. And at that time, our work group was comprised of several members from our local self-advocacy association who had said that they actually host a cable television show, and so they had access to the studio and to a video camera. And so we thought it would be a great project to work on. Not only would we be educating the volunteers, but it was more an empowering type of opportunity for the people who've been a part of our committee to say, well, we want to help make a change. And so we had those people be involved, and they assisted us in writing the scripts, the acting, the producing, complete editing the video for us. So it was kind of, killing two birds with one stone, and it was a great project for us. Once it was completed, we did send it to all of our New York Makes Work Pay partners, and of course, to Andy and the staff at REI did a great job of helping us spread the word about, this tool that we had created and what it was intended to do. And so the purpose of us creating it was so that we could show it in our volunteer trainings so that people, would feel comfortable. And the video, if you haven't seen it, is intended to be very lighthearted, and we had a lot of fun making it. And, the reason that we did it was to educate people about why they shouldn't be afraid or uncomfortable about asking this question, and truly that, you're supposed to speak to anybody who has a disability like you would anybody else. And so that's probably it. I know I have to get off the call early. I don't know if there were any questions I wanted to ask now. Katie, I don't know if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, if we have any questions in the next couple minutes, if you want to send a Q&A to Nakia or I while Katie's still on the line, we'll try to squeeze it in.
Yes.
If we get any questions, I'm going to turn it back over to you, if that's okay.
Great. Thank you, Katie. And thank you, Katie Lyons, for sharing information on your video, and also for allowing the National Disability Institute to share it with our partners. If you're interested in looking at the video, please go to our website at www.realeconomicimpact.org, and you can find it in the REI Tour Virtual Toolkit. That's located there on our website. I encourage you to go and check out the video soon if you're interested in, because it will go to a secure site. So please visit our website today if you would like to see that video.
Katie Mess, and I just wanted to recognize we just had a question on that, so I just wanted to let them know that answered.
Okay. Great. So with that, if there are no other questions coming in, then we will turn it on over to our next presenter. I'm fortunate today to have Amanda King, who is with Internal Revenue Service and located in the Tampa Bay region in Florida. And she was involved with the virtual VITA pilot the National Disability Institute coordinated and worked on with United Way of Tampa Bay. So with that, Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Katie. I just wanted to say good afternoon. Like Michael, my name is Amanda King. I'm with the IRS SPEC in Hillsborough County, and it was an honor this year to work with the National Disability Institute and United Way of Tampa Bay on the virtual pilot for the 2012 filing season. Pilot, 92 taxpayers received assistance. We had 8 separate intake sites throughout Florida, and through the sites we had roughly $35,000 in earned income tax credit and $7,000 in total refund dollars from those 92 returns. We are able to assist 20 taxpayers that ASL interpreters actually prepare that return. Thank United Way of Tampa Bay, NDI, and all participating agencies that hosted intake sites this season, that they will provide this valuable service to taxpayers throughout Florida. To briefly discuss the VITA process and cover the methods that we used during the pilot to highlight the successful use of the technology we used, and then insight on how a virtual program can be used in your area. The first question will be, if you've never heard of virtual VITA or not really sure what that actually is, it involves tax preparation in which technology is used to connect the volunteer with the taxpayer. And this is in opposition to a face-to-face meeting happening. So the virtual preparation can be used in both rural areas to reach taxpayers with the inability to travel, as well as in urban areas to offer an alternative to the traditional VITA model. During the 2011 filing season, the pilot that we used scanner technology, internet, and video conferencing to be able to provide the free tax preparation to the taxpayers in Florida. So that's the method that we actually used. This next slide is a little difficult to see, and I apologize for that, but this is pulled from our manual that we used for the virtual VITA project. So I'm going to run through the process that a taxpayer would encounter when they're completing returns using our virtual model. As shown, the taxpayer arrives at the intake site with their required documentation, and then the intake process that you would at any other VITA location. All the procedures and site requirements are the same as traditional VITA sites. The identity must be verified, and intake sheets and consents have to be completed to participate in the virtual program. And one noticeable difference for the virtual model is that tax documents are scanned. Use file sharing program. We use YouSendIt during filing season, and then those files are transferred to the preparation site from the intake site using email. The video technology that we used for our pilot was GoToMeeting, and that allowed the taxpayer to see the tax preparer and monitor the input of their tax into the TaxWise system. So they were able to see every little detail that was being put into the system, so it helped increase our accuracy and quality of the return. The tax preparer uses those scanned documents that were sent with YouSendIt and uses GoToMeeting and TaxWise to conduct the tax interview, prepare the return, perform the review, and then upload the tax return back to the taxpayer located at the intake site. All information would then be reviewed by the taxpayer. They'd address any issues that the taxpayer had with the return, and then the signature forms are completed using video technology as a witness so that we can see them signing the form, and that enabled us to actually e-file the return from the preparation site. So that's the process in a nutshell. For the virtual intake site, the basic requirements that we use to establish the sites to make sure that the technology will both function properly and that we could give the taxpayer a positive experience. Volunteers at the intake sites were not required to have tax law training, as those skills required at the preparation site. They would not be preparing the site from the intake, or preparing the return from the intake site, so that's not a qualification that those volunteers had to have. Anyone involved in the program at the intake site would be required to have the ethics training that the IRS has made mandatory for this year and for upcoming years. So the sites have to have the ethics training, have to have computer systems that meet the requirements of the program that we've established, the flash, the printer, scanner, obviously they have to have internet access so that they can allow the technology to work, and also a webcam, speakers, and a microphone to allow the process to run. We actually have Trey Littlefield from Park that can give a little bit of insight from intake site perspective. The program did work, so I'm not sure if he's on the phone right now.
Amanda, I don't think that he has checked it.
Was able to. Okay. All right. The feedback that we did receive from the intake sites is that the taxpayers had a wonderful experience. They thought it was a very personal experience. That was often a misconception. When people would begin, they thought it may not be a personal experience, they'd be uncomfortable with the process, but once they realized that you could see everything that was happening, you were able to see the tax preparer face-to-face over the conferencing, it really did leave them with a positive experience and a positive view of the virtual program. On to the preparation site. The preparation sites were also established for the pilot, and those include volunteers who completed the IRS tax law certification because they're actually preparing the tax returns and providing guidance to the taxpayers. The strategy pieces included GoToMeeting that I referred to before, that allowed the taxpayer to see the tax volunteer and also conduct the tax interview. So if every process that's instilled in a regular VITA happens just with the use of technology. Then the use send it file sharing was used to securely transmit the taxpayer documents, as well as Taxwise Online was the program that we actually used to prepare the return. Taxpayers can see the return preparation at the intake site, and like I said before, that's going to increase both the accuracy and quality of the returns on top of the taxpayer experience. It makes them feel very confident when they can see what's being done. If they have a question, they can address it and then have that answered. Use appointment scheduling that was an online program. We used www.appointment.com, and it was used for virtual only. It would enter the request from the intake site, so everyone had access to this online scheduling program. And the use of this program allowed the intake sites to see available appointment slots in real time, and that helped us to avoid both scheduling conflicts and to assist our site coordinator. Cara Moore at United Way was an amazing site coordinator. She was able to allow us to know how many volunteers that we needed to staff the sites, as well as making sure that we had appropriate preparers at the sites for the type of return that was being completed. The online appointments initiated an email to be sent to the taxpayer confirming the appointment, and that enabled the site coordinator to see all projected appointments for the week, and that helped us with volunteer scheduling. The creation of a procedure manual was a key point in the success of this pilot, I feel. And for a taxpayer or a new volunteer to enter a virtual model, whether at an intake site or at the preparation site, the process of completing a return using the virtual VITA program was simplified. And this was because of the step-by-step instructions that they received in the procedure manual that was sitting at each of the computers during the process. In the manual, there were example forms that included for reference for the taxpayer as well as the volunteer at the intake site. And that was information that included things such as the forms that they would need to complete, consent forms, the intake form. Also, it gave assistance for tax-wise input and just helped the entire process. The manual also able to provide troubleshooting guidance as well as screenshots, technology pieces that were used for reference. So if a person walked into the site, was not sure how to log into GoToMeeting, for example, we had shots that would explain to them step by step on how to do that. So it really does help with the process that you've ever seen to help things run smoothly. The main piece for virtual VITA was done at the intake sites in an effort to focus on existing clients. Taxpayers unable or unwilling to travel to traditional VITA locations received assistance in a familiar setting with trusted individuals. And if you speak to taxpayers, that's one key thing. They need to feel comfortable with the service that they're receiving, and found that if they're going to a place with individuals that they have already established a relationship with, the whole will run more smoothly. So they also have the option to advertise through the IRS.gov VITA site locator. That can be limited, or at least it was for us in the beginning, to assess demand for the service. It can be either increased or decreased depending on the resources of the intake site. So we did find that some sites, middle of the season, had decided, you know what, our marketing can be expanded a little bit, so I'm going to place that site on IRS.gov to try and increase the traffic in that site. So like with any model, if you see something that needs to be adjusted, we were able to do that in terms of marketing. To traditional VITA or TCU sites is always available, of course, for instances in which the intake site could not accommodate the requests that were coming in for virtual appointments. Something that we had to keep in mind as well is that we didn't want too many taxpayers so that we could not accommodate their requests. We had to have a positive experience. So we all had a referral that was available during the pilot. The key to success for the virtual VITA model is in pinpointing the needs of taxpayers in your individual area. What works in Hillsborough County may not work in the area, but the framework of the virtual VITA model can be used. So intake sites may require fewer resources, or they do require fewer resources for setup and operation, and enable more partners to host sites and offer the free tax preparation to existing and future clients. If partners are interested, they need to assess the hardware and software requirements, their needs, and also space requirements to participate in the program. And success of the virtual pilot can be attributed to thorough planning, I'd say real expectations, and also dedication of both our site coordinator, the volunteers that came to the sites to prepare taxes, and each and every volunteer that was at the intake sites that helped it be a success for the year. Like I said before, the site coordinator, Cara Moore with United Way, was just when it came to the planning and organizing of actual tax reviews and the time that it took. One difference that you'll see is that these virtual appointments take a little bit longer than a normal to turn to complete. But in this model, it's really about quality. You want to make sure that every taxpayer that receives this service is comfortable with the process. It's new, so with each year we see that the process will be simplified and it will take less time. So you'll see that time go down as your volunteers gain more expertise in using the model. Again, I want everyone that was involved in the planning and implementation of the virtual VITA pilot in Florida. It was true success, and I believe it's going to continue to provide a positive model for the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing some information on the virtual VITA model. We will open this up to questions at the end. I'm sorry that Trey Littlefield was not with us today, but we will have a report, an evaluation. We have evaluated the virtual VITA model that we implemented in the state of Florida. And some of our partners are on the phone today that have worked with us on it. And the report will share information with you on the successes, but it will also share with you the challenges that exist when implementing this model. Technology for some groups was a challenge and an issue. So you have to make sure there's adequate training for the intake sites as well as the volunteers on how to use the various technology. So you can be able to check out that report once it's completed, and you will also it will also be on the REI Tour listserv. So once again, if you have not signed up for the REI Tour listserv, please be sure to sign up for it because that's where the report will be distributed. So again, thank you so much, Amanda, for the great work that you've done on this project. So next up, we have Erica Gillian with the Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind, and she is going to share with us some information on the VITA community work that they had done there in Dallas. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erica.
For their assistance, and the grant that we received has been very helpful to extend what we saw as an issue for our employees. Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind employs about 250 people in different environments, from manufacturing to sewing to call center work. 80% of those people are blind or visually impaired and may have multiple disabilities. The reason we decided to start a VITA site was basically to offer an additional service to our employees who were currently earning money and working and earning disability from Social Security. We wanted to change our employees, increase their knowledge base of the options and opportunities that were out there as far as getting taxes done, knowing what income credit is, how to manage money. So we figured the VITA site was a great place to start. Years ago, we came across an email from IRS Spec Rep and were very intrigued. We decided at that time that it was a good move for us as an organization to jump into the VITA site program. And 2 years ago, we applied for a VITA grant, for a grant through REI and received it. We used those monies to promote the VITA site. The first year we saw probably 10% of our employees participate. There we were at about 40% participation of total employees. I spent a lot of time discussing their options as far as building money, building wealth, and also the VITA site for us has been a community, and also our employees are, some come from homes with people with their disabilities, and so the blind vine, as we call it, spread pretty fast, and we saw our VITA site grow 3 times as much within 1 year span. As far as what we saw our best practices last year, our first year doing it, all of our volunteers were people who were sighted, and we kind of wanted to educate the community. Our second year, we wanted to bring in people with disabilities. So we brought in some of our employees who were blind or visually impaired, some people who come to our events who want to volunteer. So over a little close to half of our volunteers this year were blind, visually impaired, and they did a phenomenal job of performing or preparing taxes for people who were sighted. So it was a lot of education for the non-disabled volunteers and the community of folks who might have tried to figure out what we do, but understanding how we do what we do, and that someone with a disability is more than capable and did a phenomenal job of bringing those taxes and getting them out. I would say that if we had a lesson learned was our success stories, learning to capture those really quickly. As people in, we get them through, do an intake, do their taxes, take a quick survey, and getting a grasp on how the impact and tracking who helping and kind of engaging them into further management of their finances and further education of finance management. During the last year, we hosted a REI summit at Dallas City Hall with Mayor Pro Tem Pauline Medrano. We've worked with our work group, and I'll share a little story. We were sitting in our class for our volunteers, and our trainer told some of our volunteers, "Can you please open your books?" Because the books were just sitting in front of them, and they just there. So she said, "Well," one of our volunteers turned and said, "Well, ma'am, the books, I can't use them because I'm legally blind." So she quickly apologized, and volunteer did, explain to her that there was no need to apologize, and that, it happens, but it's just one of those things that our site has been an asset to not just our employees, which was our initial thing, to reach out to our immediate area and hope that it had a trickling effect, which it did well beyond our imagination. We had neighborhood folks come in who are limited English, and some of our volunteers would translate for us. We had translators on, so we had people who were blind and deaf. So it became a really great learning experience, not just for our individuals who are disabled or blind or had disabilities, but mainly for those of us who did not or had perceptions in our minds. So I thank Mo, I thank Katie and National Disability Institute for all they've done and the grant, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Erica. We appreciate the information that you shared with us today. Next up, I'd like to introduce Jenny Powell, who is the Customer Connect Manager with Goodwill Industries of Omaha. And Jenny is also a member of NDI's REI Tour Leadership Circle. So with that, Jenny, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you for inviting us to be a part of this. Ford Alliance is the Omaha EITC Coalition's committee that is dedicated to disability issues and for individuals with disabilities and their families, and how we can reach out better to that population. When I think the Omaha EITC Coalition promotes the tax credits, and that kind of like, how do we do what we do well when it comes to disability? When I started thinking about this, you'll have to forgive my sense of humor, but when I did a search on success in the field, this picture came up, and I just could not resist the call. But you need to find a champion, and that champion is there to help educate the staff so they can ask the clients, where are you, and educate the clients where it can be. And then you can use those answers, because that way you have research to actually make some changes and make a difference in the community. I am with Goodwill Industries. I joined the coalition several years ago, started as a tax preparer, and now the chair of the Ford Alliance Committee, and I'm on the advisory board. So I kind of became the champion for disability issues, also known as slave labor, because of course I'm a volunteer, and I spend a lot of time on the EITC coalition because I think it's so important and I enjoy it so much. The staff, and that's the volunteers. All of our volunteers receive disability awareness training. And then, of course, we also do training on the tax credits themselves that may relate to disability issues. And then we also send out refreshers before the tax season so that people are reminded of kind of those sensitivity things and specific tax credits that may be involved. I think a couple of the presenters have already hit on the idea that a lot of times volunteers may not have exposure to people with disabilities, or not the range of disabilities that they may encounter. And having that training, that disability awareness, really open, honest communication of, to say to a blind person, do you see what I mean? You don't have to be embarrassed or be afraid of asking questions and talking to somebody, as long as you remember that they're people and you treat them like anybody else. That's the thing that we started as having like a 1 week of tax season really campaign to do a great deal of outreach, And this last tax season, we looked at it and said, you know, what we do for everybody, and we do it all year. So I think we need to be more inclusive and not have a week dedicated to this, but show that we do this throughout the tax season, and anybody with a disability can come at any time and feel comfortable at any of our sites. As far as training your staff goes, we have an excellent presentation. People come in and we talk. There's other sites out there, other opportunities for great training. But one of that training, what you need to do is you need to talk to your clients, talk to taxpayers. We do a survey to gather a lot of socioeconomic information. We menu, and then of course there is that tax preparation discussion, and that's where you can find out a lot about where people are at. So what does fit, what credits are going to work for them. This is money menu. This is something that our coalition developed, and it's been extremely helpful in the intake interview process in that very first stage. Taxpayers are given this. They have a chance to look over it. It is double-sided. It's Spanish on the other side because we have a very large Spanish-speaking population that we serve. And they can look through and see if there are services that they're interested in and check those off. So it gives you a good starting point of where to talk about some further things. This has been really, really beneficial to having that all spread out. When you ask, you get to learn about, where things are giving them trouble, where might they need a little more help or assistance, and referrals to other places, which we do a great deal of. To get a lot of data then about how are people with disabilities using their refund, to get a little bit better idea of what their situation is. And that gives us the opportunities to then educate taxpayers about finding their taxes. We benefit screening to see if they're eligible for benefits, credits reports, pension assistance, referrals. We see what we do as so much more than just doing their taxes, and to help our tax preparers and our taxpayers come together. This little graph just kind of shows a little bit how that all really works together. That the more you talk to somebody, the more you have that person involved in what you're doing, the more they understand and can turn around and improve their own financial situation. This shows just a little bit about those money menu services and how they're used. Credit reports are just about always the biggest thing. But this is also how we recruit more volunteers, is find out, people have been coming to us for a few years, are kind of willing to help and step in for the next year. It's just a screenshot of that benefit screening, subscription jug that we do. We're in Bank on the Heartland, so we do a lot of outreach education to people about having bank accounts, debit cards, savings accounts, things like that, and get them into that. Once we've done all of this talking, we have so much information. Now that when you have that information, it's a powerful tool to move forward and do other things with your coalition, with your site, and for your customers. One of the things is checking your effectiveness. That's something that we can look at, banked. And we have seen an increase in banked people with disabilities. That shows us that the education that we're doing, we may be able to claim all the credit, but something is going right in the area. And that's a good double check for us. It's also a way to look at where are people using their refunds, how is it changing, does that mean that we need to do some other education in certain areas? We also, this past year, one of our interns did this report, and it was actually distributed throughout the community to talk about long-term unemployment and how that affects people financially, but what that means policy-wise and for the makeup of our community. So I really looked at what we were doing and developed some action steps. We're always looking on improving our training. We incorporate our outreach activities year-round. We're working to increase sites in disability agencies. I think that's one of the presenters mentioned, people have to feel comfortable and safe, and if you can do their taxes at a place they are already familiar with, you're going to be more likely to have the people come and give you the information that you need to do their taxes. We also formalized our committee into Ford Alliance. We've worked more with NDI. We had a really great working group earlier this year and have been following up with more meetings with those participants to get the community a little more involved in making sure that we are having excellent outreach with people. Here's just a shot of our REI meeting that went so well. So we raise awareness, we make it a year-round focus, and we connect all taxpayers with any resources that we can come up with. And by doing that, we have become a trusted resource. This is the director of our coalition's one of my favorite sayings, and I think it's something that our coalition does really well, is turning a transaction into a relationship. And we can see that because not only have the number of returns that we've done grown steadily, but most people, and that's ongoing, they come back and they refer their friends, they refer their family to come see us as well. And that percentage is actually even higher among people with disabilities. So that shows that they come, they trust us, and recommend that their friends, their family, other people that they know to get help from us. And with that, we make a huge difference in the community. It's a lot of money that gets turned back into the community that helps raise a lot of our constituents up out of the poverty level. And so that's something that we like to remind people about when they're not sure why this type of service is beneficial, is to be able to, sometimes you got to show them the money. And that's the money, that's what we put back into the community by providing this service. And that's Scott, so I'll turn it back to Michael.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenny, for the information that you shared. And thank you also for sharing the report that you all had done. And as I had shared with Jenny and Ed Leahy whenever I was in Omaha, it's one of the best reports that I have read that really looks at unemployment, not specifically to persons with disabilities, but to this work that we are all doing. And we did put it on the RI Tour listserv, and we can go back and put it on the listserv again if you would like to check out the report. It's an excellent, excellent report. So I know we are at time, but we do have a couple questions that have come in. So if you have to drop off, feel free, that's okay. But we would like to answer about a couple questions. And here's when I give you the questions, if we could keep our responses pretty brief, that would be great. So the first question is asking about, is the manual developed for the virtual model that is being discussed available on the REI Tour website? It is not on the REI Tour website. The report will be on our website. The procedure manual is something that we'll go back and make some changes and talk with United Way of Tampa Bay on as well. And then once everybody gives their permission, then we can share that with you. So we will hopefully be able to distribute it on our listserv as well. The next question that has come in is for Richard. Richard, earlier you talked about the virtual VITA model and the baseline. And the question is when you talk about virtual VITA, are you including remote file, deaf tax, as well as those groups that are using the telephone to have returns done? Are you including all of those pieces into the virtual VITA model?
Well, the answer to that would be anything that is non-face-to-face tax preparation that uses TaxWise software. I hope that answers the question. I mean, it would include everything you said. So it would not count a party software that we use for facilitated self-assistance. It would be face-to-face. But uses TaxWise software via Skype, via telephone, or some other medium.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the next question that we have is Jenny. Is the survey tool that you all have used in Omaha available for others to duplicate?
What a great question. It was developed by Ed Leahy, our director, and a team. We kind of came together as a coalition to develop it. I think I would kind of need to get the thumbs up from Ed before we distribute it, but I would imagine that is something that we could do. We're looking at revamping it this year. We've asked pretty much the same questions several years in a row so that we can compare data effectively. And when we tweaked them a little bit this year, decided that some questions could fall off and some questions needed more information, like that long-term unemployment question, which we didn't have before. And so I think that I'll talk to Ed, and I will get back with Michael to let us know a better answer on that.
That's great. And Ed had sent me a chat and said that thumbs up, so I'm taking it we might be able to do that. And
excellent.
We could post that on the REI Tour listserv. And Nikia Matthews has shared how you can sign up for the listserv in the chat box, so be sure to check that out as well. Let's see. We have a question for Amanda King. Amanda, is Youth Send It technology available to all partners?
That is something I actually have to check on because it's something that United Way of Tampa Bay was already using. So I can look into that.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. So we will add that as a follow-up as well. And then, okay. Richard, it looks like we have another question for you. Isn't the question asked on the IRS intake and interview sheet, does someone in your family have a disability? Not sure why people were uncomfortable with asking. So do you mind elaborating some on that?
A lot of people felt uncomfortable answering question 12, which, by the way, it used to be on the main information sheet, tax-wise. Now it's moved to a totally separate page where there's 25 questions that can be done. But just some people feel answering the question saying, business. There was a lot of, as you know, Michael, there was a lot of pushback to the question, and since it's one of these that is a self-identification, people did not know what a definition of a disability is, and would simply say no, even though they might come in with a wheelchair or what. I guess some people feel if they get around and can normally that they don't have a disability. So that's why we kind of put together a script with Ed's help and use some of the other materials that are out there to get information and get our partners to answer the question.
Great. Thank you, Richard. And we have time for one more question, and then we'll close up the session. Is it possible, this is for Richard, is it possible to separate the question about individual with a disability and household with a disability to get a more decisive data for each?
Yeah, it is possible. It's just I we'd have to have a discussion with National Disability Institute on whether or not we want to take that after all these years of having it together. And it would also have to be something that tax-wise would have to approve in order to get the question in there.
And we will be sure to follow up on that and can go from there. I would like to thank all of our presenters for being a part of today's session and for sharing their best practices. I'd like to thank Katie Lyons, Amanda King, Erica Gillian, Jenny Powell, and, of course, Richard Keeling for the information. Please join us on June 21st at 2 p.m. We are Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where our next webinar will be on financial coaching, strengthening our assets. We'll receive information on this, and if your coalition's interested in looking at financial coaching and looking at what is financial coaching, how are groups implementing financial coaching, coaching and what type of programs are out there, this is the webinar for you to attend. We have 3 representatives from across the country that are going to be giving their perspective on their different financial coaching programs. So please feel free to join us for that. Also, please check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and various social media locations. And also, thank you again to our sponsors. Without them, we would not have this webinar series today. So with that, I thank you all, and as we go into the summer, I hope everybody has a great month. And thank you again for joining us.